might go ahead and get started. I'm sure people will continue to join us in the first few minutes here. So, students, friends, colleagues, I'm Professor Donald Bates. I'm the Chair of Architectural Design at the Melbourne School of Design and the Associate Dean for Engagement for the Faculty of Architecture, Building and Planning at the University of Melbourne. I begin proceedings by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I am presenting, the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and those emerging, and to all Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders who are witnessing this presentation. It's very much my pleasure to be able to introduce Daliana Suryawininata and Florian Heintzelmann, founders of SHAU, S-H-A-U, to this audience for MSD at Home, and for their talk, Microlibraries and Other Multi-Programmatic Spaces. I became aware of Daliana and Florian while on the jury for the Lafarge-Holcim Foundation for Sustainable Constructions Award, the Asia-Pacific region, in 2017. Their project, the Microlibrary Fibonacci, received the Silver Award for the Asia-Pacific Award Series, and the project gave me an introduction to a very considered, very innovative repertoire of design propositions that have continued to provide greater and greater interest to me as I became aware of their output. I'm therefore very, very pleased to be able to host their presentation this evening and to share their design trajectories to a wider office, and particularly the audience here in Melbourne at the University of Melbourne. Daliana Suryawininata and Florian Heintzelmann are founders of SHAU, S-H-A-U, Rotterdam, Bandung, although they're presently located in Bandung more or less full-time. SHAU works on multiple scales and typologies with a cultural environmental agenda. Their work includes public spaces, vertical housing, visionary master plans, and microlibraries. Daliana studied architecture at Tarum Manggara University in Jakarta and obtained a postgraduate degree at the Berlage Institute in Rotterdam in 2005. She has worked for OMA, MVRDV, and West 8, and has taught master courses at the Y Factory at TU Delft. She is doing her PhD by Design Research in Urbanism with Winnie Moss at TU Delft. Daliana is a board member of the Indonesian Diaspora Foundation. She has also founded the Livable Cities Task Force at the Indonesian Diaspora Network. And together with former Minister Mari Pangestu and architect Diana Ang and art manager Wendy Salomo, she co-organized the Kota Tua Creative Festival in 2014. Florian studied architecture at Munich University of Applied Sciences and obtained a postgraduate degree also at the Berlage Institute, but in 2006. He was a project architect at UN Studios in Amsterdam. He's been a researcher, master course tutor, and solar decathlon project manager at TU Delft, and completed his PhD research on adaptive daylight structures at the TU in Eindhoven. He is also a program liaison with the Indonesian Diaspora Foundation. And Florian is currently a visiting senior fellow at NUS University, the National University of Singapore, in the Department of Architecture. I don't want to go through all the list, although there is a very huge list of awards and exhibitions and publications, but just to say that SHAU, their practice was established in 2009 with an independent office in Rotterdam and Munich, and then more recently with the office in Indonesia, first in Jakarta and now in Bandung. The individual offices collaborate on a project basis and combine their extensive working experience in well-established and internationally recognized architectural firms where they've successfully worked on numerous projects at various scales. SHAU actively engages itself with international exhibitions, curatorial project commissions, writing, lectures, debates, and international design competitions. Their collaborator, Tobias Hoffmann, runs the project from Germany. I think it is worth noting some of the more recent awards. I know that they recently received an Architizer A Award for 2020. They received the INDE.Awards in 2018 in the influencer category. They received the Small Firm of the Year Award in Sustainable Architecture from the American Architecture Prize in 2017. The Lafarge-Holcim Award for Asia-Pacific in 2017. And they were shortlisted for the Aga Khan Award for Architecture in 2019. Their list of exhibitions and publications is quite extensive, so I just suggest that you go online and look up their work. It's really amazing. But to do that, first, we'd like to have their presentation, where I think some of these incredible projects will be explained in more detail. So I'm now going to turn it over to Daliana and Florian and let them share the screen and present their presentation. Daliana.
Thank you very much for introduction.
Thank you so much, Donald. Hi, everyone. I'm Daliana.
I'm Florian. Hi.
Hello. We're going to start the screen sharing right now. It's a stroke of luck that yesterday was the World Literature Day, and we're going to talk about microlibraries, but also other multi-programmatic spaces. So we'd like to show our influence, like where we were before SHAU, before we set up our own practice. As Professor Donald has expressively introduced us, there is no need to talk so much about this. But I think we do have an influence from our studies at the Netherlands. Do you agree with that, Florian?
Mm-hmm.
So in 2009, we decided to open our own firm because we'd like to curate projects of our own. The kind of projects which are multi-scalar. So it could be like of different scales, small or large master plans. But of all of these projects, we'd like them to have performance. So design performance, which could be beneficial environmentally and also socially. We are very much influenced by the following thoughts by Constant Nieuwenhuis and the concept of homo ludens by Huizinga, which is about the importance of play. And of course, who would disagree that everybody likes to play. And we try to, as much as possible in our work, insert this concept of play. And you could see on the slides the images from New Babylon, proposal by Constant Nieuwenhuis, that reminds us of this very important concept of play. And also Aldo van Eyck's notion of place and occasion. So Aldo van Eyck stated, whatever space and time mean, place and occasion mean much, much more. And we believe that. I mean, this is an image from the Dijkstraat project, where he and his colleagues built 100 temporary and permanent playgrounds after the bombing in Amsterdam, around Amsterdam. So this is like, of course, the left image shows a space, but he makes a place out of it. And wouldn't it be nice if we have a place that could serve for multiple occasions? And this is what we would like to try to do in our projects. And of course, there is this famous diagram from OMA. They call it the programmatic lava diagram, which they did to explain their concept for the Yokohama Master Plan competition in 1991, where at that moment, OMA proposed a kind of a formless intervention, not only in terms of individual buildings, but something that could be more multi-programmatic, one space being used for different purposes. And I'm handing this over to Florian, who's going to explain to you one of our multi-programmatic projects, the microlibrary intervention.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you, Daliana, for handing over. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about our microlibraries. So this is a cornerstone of our projects. You know, they're small, And we can experiment and try out a lot of things and then implement them on a bigger scale later. And that ranges really from social concerns, communal concerns, up to environmental concerns. And we do a lot of with passive climatic strategies. And why do we do this? Because, Indonesia is still behind in terms of reading interest and also reading competence. At the same time, Indonesia wants to play a bigger role in the Southeast Asian community. But at a certain moment, it's not only about exporting your raw products, your raw goods to the world, but you also have to build up a knowledge society. And reading competence and education is a key factor to that. And unfortunately, we need a little bit more support and do a little bit more about that, especially when it comes to the public realm, because you must understand in Indonesia, there are public facilities, but it's not as widespread or as well worked out as it is maybe in more developed countries like in Europe or in Australia. So, and it starts already with the lack of public libraries. And what you see here, these are on the left side are friends of ours, but on the right side they're just random people. And because of lack of public libraries, they sit in bookstores, in shopping malls, and start reading there. And you see, there are some people who like reading, but reading is also still a sort of a punishment for children. So what we try to achieve with our microlibraries is sort of also change the perspective towards reading, change the image of reading, change the image of books, that is not so much anymore a matter of punishment, but really a matter of something to have fun with. And there's also some tool we employ, what Daliana mentioned earlier, the play space. So we try to lure the kids into sort of the libraries, and you will see in the examples how we do that. So the issue is a little bit, what you see here in this diagram is with the city library. So Indonesia is a very informal society. And if you build a large city library, then the threshold for maybe poorer people is too high that they would like to enter, nor are they well connected in the city, and it's really hard for them to reach. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the mobile library. So we have some initiatives here in Bandung also where you have like these book trolleys going around. It works, it's very utilitarian, but the problem with that, it hardly builds any identity. So we want to place ourselves in between this mobile library and the city library, also because we know with a building, and a special building, which is specifically designed for the location, you can have some sort of neighborhood identity. And what a mobile library never can do is, satisfy the communal needs. So these microlibraries immediately also become community centers, neighborhood centers. And the way we do it, a lot of these projects we do self-initiated. So we find the client, we find the money. But this is this basic diagram or the basic scheme how we work together. So we always need the government to give us a piece of land, NGOs and funding partners to support. NGOs can support it with activities and education for the staffing, for the people, the volunteers who run the library, and funding partners. We mostly look for CSR funding, corporate social responsibility from companies. And then of course the community, the local community has to have a say and is staffing the library. But how this looks specifically for each library will show in a second. So so far you see here a big screen, a lot of design. So over the past years, we really made a lot of sketch designs and proposals for a lot of different locations here in Indonesia. And we were able to build 5 of them. One is the Taman Bima, then the Taman Lansia one, the Selasar in 2018, the Hanging Gardens in 2019, and the Varak Kayu in 2020. And today we're going to show the Bima one, and the Hanging Garden one, and the Varak Kayu one. And with this, I would like to hand back to Daliana. She's going to show the Microlibrary Bima.
Thank you, Florian. So Microlibrary Bima is our first microlibrary built in Bandung. And this is an interesting story, let's say, because we met the Dompet Duafa, which is a Muslim charity organization in Los Angeles. And at that moment, we were catching a taxi, and suddenly there is this Indonesian older guy who happened to be the president director of Dompet Duafa. And after a couple of talks, they have a library program which they want to build, and we have this initial idea of microlibraries, and it does take a while to get one built. So if you're a student or young professional in architecture, be patient. Architecture it takes a marathon. It's not an instant discipline. It takes a while. But in 2016, we have the luck of having Ridwan Kamil, a former architect who became the mayor of Bandung. So he introduced us to a site which is very interesting in Bandung, and we could then build with Dompet Duafa this first idea. So this microlibrary is mostly known for its reusing of 2,000 ice cream buckets on the facade. And the stakeholders are very important. So the Youth Center Karang Taruna, who already has engagement with reading and library activities, and the city of Bandung and Dompet Duafa are the sponsors, and they gave access to the land, and a lot of our awards came to this design as well. And very important as well is the operational phase, where we had help from Indonesian Diaspora Foundation and from different places. So the context is very important. It's sitting in between the middle income housing and low income housing by the lake, by the river. So this is an image of the urban village next to the microlibrary. So these are the people that the microlibrary would like to serve, as well as it becomes a kind of place where social interaction can happen of all different classes. And they have an existing stage already built on the plaza, and we do not want to take what is already there, but to enhance it by adding a structure, a simple structure, yet a shading structure, being open and protected, and with this bucket facade, allowing cross ventilation and natural lighting, so there is no need for air conditioning. So the ice cream buckets, it could filter light, and we made piercings, holes in some of them to allow air ventilation. So why not? We thought we could also use from the piercing of some of the buckets to code it with a binary code that gives a message on the facade. And the message is, books are the windows to the world, which we work together with a friend who helped us coding this. And if you put all these numbers, binary codes in Google, you will get the translation, buku adalah jendela dunia, which is the Indonesian message. So these are some interior images of the microlibrary Bima. The light is enough during from the outside without having to turn on the light. So it's good enough for reading. And in the evening, it could light up like a lampion, like a lantern. And this, you see in this image, it's being used for community presentation or youth gathering. But what is really interesting for us is these extra activities that happen. So the idea of microlibrary is not only to provide a library, but also to make sure that there are other community activities that are happening there. So in this case, it's happening under the library, which is the stage. And there is free monthly baby clinic that is happening here. So on the left image, you can see a zoom of one of the babies being weighed. And this is what's happening on a monthly basis. There are other activities such as storytelling by Ridwan Kamil or with puppets by the community, as well as arts and crafts activity with the local university, as well as some reading sessions which are held by the communities, and also some of the local schools use this library as an extension of their curriculum. And now back to you, Florian, for the hanging gardens.
Thank you. So now I show you the second one, the Microlibrary Hanging Gardens, is also in Bandung, also with the mayor Ridwan Kamil, and this time it's different CSR funder, which is Manila, not vanilla, Manila water. So you see here completely entirely different concept. It's also in a dense city surrounding, and basically it's a set of stacked planter boxes spiraling around like a stair. And this project has kind of a longer history because we started in the beginning with an entirely different concept. But this is also something, you know, we would like to hint at. So in this sort of project, it's not very easy or not very, so simple and straightforward sometimes to just design something and then work it out and get it built. With finding the funding, we also take a great deal of responsibility. And this was also one of the reasons why we had to redesign the project. I will show you the rendering in a second. But you see here, this is the surrounding, and it's a very dense urban surrounding. And we were fighting for this location very much because the donor Manila Water, they are not far away from here, but they wanted to have it more in their neighborhood. But the problem with that is that it was a middle income neighborhood, and then people there, they don't live necessarily the house. They don't live the street life. They're not going to buy things from the street peddlers and so on and so forth. So they're not participating that much in the street life. So if you would place a microlibrary there, it would be totally, yeah, I wouldn't say in vain, but it is a little bit problematic. But with this neighborhood there's a primary school nearby, there's a district office, there's a military compound, and most importantly, there's a Puskesmas, which is a small public clinic. So we really discussed and fought for this location to have a library at a location where a lot of people are. Because only with that we can sort of add with our multi-programmatic spaces, we can build up synergies and we can build up added value for the immediate neighborhood. So you see here how it looks like over there. So you have like the street peddlers in front. This is next to the clinic where you see on the top left with the ambulances. And basically the site itself has actually only a basketball field, and it's actually basically a parking lot. So we thought like this is really a good spot. There's kids nearby, so you can attract a lot of people and can really do something good for the neighborhood. Oh yeah, okay, thank you. So yeah, you see this was the very first design. And, you know, we are sort of, as an architect, you're always responsible for the budget. And so we worked this building out, even though it's just a rendering and you don't see it here, we worked this building out completely. So it's basically, we thought about a technique, how to make CNC cut OSB oriented strand board cassettes, which are stacked in this helicoid geometry, and we worked out every detail. But then in the end of the day, we sort of figured and realized, A, it's a little bit too expensive, and B, it's also a little bit too risky in a tropical environment with all the rain and the, you know, the water and the sunlight and the shrinking and the expansion of the building to get it really watertight and get it really in a quality we want to have, as well as we wanted to coat it in polyurethane, and you know, thinking about like all these people walking up and down into the public building, so it has to withstand a lot of force. So we thought like, okay, no, this we can't do. We need to do something more rugged, more, which is, you know, more sturdy than this sort of construction. So we sort of rethought like, what can we do? And basically we only kept this idea of the stair. But then we thought like, okay, what do we do in the stair if it's just like a seating surface is also a little bit less. So we thought like, okay, let's do this stair and we make planter boxes, and let's see how it goes with the city and how it goes with the surrounding and how it goes with the people. So maybe we can do some urban farming up there and really see if people really like to use it. And here comes also again a little bit of this idea of our passive climatic strategy into this, because or the sustainability aspect, because, you know, we have a lot of flooding in Indonesia and the sewage system is not fantastic. So if we sort of capture a lot of rainwater in these planter boxes, then they will evaporate. This evaporation will generate cooling underneath. At the same time, the rainwater will be in a delayed fashion brought into the sewage system. So it adds to the microclimate. And we thought like, actually the whole lot is already so sealed with concrete, so that we would like to add a lot of greenery to break that up a little bit and make this space also a little bit more livable. And then of course with all these stacked planter boxes, we generate shade and a pleasant environment where people can sit and hang out. And yeah, this is the basic model. So really, like, we wanted to have it lush and green and growing. And here you see a isometric explosion of what we have in terms of program, because we didn't only add the greenery and the library underneath and the vantage point towards the sports plaza that people can go up and watch, but we also had this slide and playground element. So what we start doing now with all the microlibraries, we want to integrate at least one playing feature. And it was also very interesting to see this being built up during construction process. We really had a hard time to keep the kids away, because sort of it seems like a stacked landscape attracts very much the kids. So they were already climbing and running around in this structure early on. So you see, this is a close-up, a zoom in. So this is made in concrete. The reason was like, okay, it's a public building. We want to have it rugged and sturdy, but nonetheless, you see with this horizontal lining, we took very much care of the foam work of the concrete, that we have this sort of layered appearance. And then you see how all these planter boxes are green. It's supposedly to grow more. That was like shortly before dry season, very early on, also with the hanging plants and growing more and more. But this is also a tricky thing. This is sort of a big learning process we had here with planting in public space and kids. It's a little bit of a tricky issue. You have to be very careful because the kids are ripping off the plant. So, you know, we need to think, or we rethought this strategy a little bit, and you will see in a second how we did it. So it's the backside of the library with the slide integrated. So it's very transparent and very open and very breathable. Nonetheless, it's shaded. So where there is not much rain, we have kept it as open as possible. And towards the front, we have closed glass doors, which can be opened also for cross ventilation. So all our micro libraries don't have any air conditioning, anything. The only thing they have is either water for irrigation and then lighting for during the evening hours. So here you see the aerial photo. There we work together with 1,000 Gardens is the translation of the initiative. So they helped us with setting up urban farming. I don't know how it's called in English. Yeah, urban farming elements on top of the library. Here you see a little bit how it looks like and how it's activated. So, and of course, you see here we have this kids here, they're wearing the school uniform. So the idea was also to provide the school next door a school garden, which they don't have. And also with the Bima microlibrary, a lot of schools, or one school in the neighborhood specifically for the Bima one, is going with the kids there on a weekly basis because they don't have their own library. So this is like exactly what we aimed for here too, to have this sort of synergies, that the building is also functioning together with the school and supports a little bit the school functions, which the school does not have. Here I zoom in how they start their urban gardening. That's the interior. So we have sort of different zones and different niches. So how did I go back? Sorry. One more, yeah. So you see the lower part then is like what we call the Kuschelecke. This is a German word which means like a cuddly corner. So we have this in Germany. I don't know if you have it in Australia, in every kindergarten, that you have this space with mats and cushions where the kids can sort of roll around and hug itself. So this is the kids' book corner there, and on the other side is more for adults. So you see here how they're sliding and reading. And, you know, one of these critiques we got actually from the Lafarge-Holcim Award, and which made us think a lot, is that each of our microlibraries is unique, and that there is not a high degree of repetition or standardization. So we were thinking like, yeah, okay, maybe we can do something in this case with timber, because we have a timber microlibrary and very good working relationship with the company. Can we not make a modular standardized version where we then can sort of customize the design to whatever location we are going to have, some sort of low-cost timber construction modular version of it. And we call this microlibrary Hanging Gardens, and this is a sort of a continuation of the hanging gardens we had. And yeah, this is what we're currently also working on. So now back to Daliana, the Fibonacci microlibrary.
Thank you, Florian. So this is the microlibrary that Donald mentioned earlier in his introduction. So we designed it in 2016, and it was meant to be in Bandung, but then it got delayed, and it will continue this year. And the idea is how to provide a park shelter that has the appearance of a modern urban ruin. So something that is not poking the eye when you see it, but it's like as if it has been there for a while and coexists nicely with the park. So it needs to have a lush trees around it and a nice park. The idea is how to make a continuous ground, so to say, the seamlessness of structure and landscape. And so the structure is open, and it has radial spirals, we will show you soon, with integrated functions in it. Because it's not just a structure, but it should contain many programs, even though it's a small structure. So instead of using a closed form, which is a radial circular structure, we prefer to use an open form, which is a radial structure along the Fibonacci spiral, hence the name Fibonacci. We did work on several variation possibilities. So you can have 5 spirals or 3 or 4, and with different kind of amount of ribs and different forms of ribs. And we decided to go with the 4 spirals because we need to provide 2 toilets, a mushola for Muslim prayers, a wudu area for the water for cleaning yourself before entering the mushola, and a kiosk. So that there could be a librarian there also selling snacks as well as taking care of the library. This is the model view from the top. We really like so much how the ribs meet each other in the middle and how this structure is designed. So we would like to propose a new nature in a way that we would use artificial grass as a carpet, because it works well in other projects where people would take off their shoes, see it as an urban living room, and then it could be more well-maintained. As well as at that moment, we were proposing a moss finish of the ceiling so that we could have the continuation of the urban landscape from the garden into the library. So this is another view from the wudu area where you can see there are some water faucet on the right side. That's for cleaning yourself before getting into the mushola spiral. So at that moment, we were at the mock-up phase, and we were working out the possibility of implementation, but we could not have the site we wanted. So rather than compensating for a lesser site, we would wait. Sometimes it's good for architects to wait for the right moment to get the project built. And this year we are very lucky that one of our clients has a site exactly fitting for this microlibrary, and we might continue it, but not with the initial material in lightweight concrete, but very much possibly in wood. So stay tuned on this, we will come back to you on this. But for now, since I mentioned wood, it's perfect to go to this project we'd like to talk about through Florian.
So yeah, this is the final microlibrary we're going to show you. This is the Varak Kayu one in Semarang, in central Java. And we just finished it recently, or in March this year. And yeah, we did it. Our client is the Aga Khan Award Foundation. Again, city of Semarang gave the land, and yeah, we had a very good prefabrication factory, which is also exporting wood, I guess, to Europe and Australia as well, PT Kayu Lapis Indonesia. So the interesting thing for us, also the interesting learning point about that one, is sort of the topic of prefabrication and sort of reduce of waste on site and so on, and all these aspects when you prefabricate something in a factory and then deliver it sort of on site itself. So this is the front view. You might have seen it in the media recently, maybe not, but anyway, yeah, we're really happy with this library. So it's like really 95% made out of timber. Most of it is FSC certified, apart from the flooring, this white oak, but the rest is all of Indonesian production and is certified wood. Sorry for the background noise. And you see, this is the frontal view in the morning. So you have the possibility with this curtain behind to keep the curtain closed, to either reduce a little bit the cross ventilation, or if really low light shines in, or if it's too blowing. But then, for instance, in the evening or during the day, you can completely open it up, and it becomes a very, very transparent and a very light structure. So we always play also, maybe you've seen with the earlier ones, like with this idea between up and down, the communication between outside and inside of the people on different levels of these buildings. It's a little bit inspired by the traditional vernacular architecture in a way of the rumah panggung, the stilted, or a house on stilts. And as you can see here, you have like on the upper space, you have the library, and then in the lower space, you have this multi-programmatic space where you can do different activities during the day. So again, here we have a similar diagram of how the project is working. So we were, in that case, we were approached by the Arkatama Esvara Foundation, who wanted to build a library. They're closely connected to PT Kayu Lapis Indonesia, which is the wood factory. And yeah, so together with them, we start to design and build. And then on the way there, we found a Harvey Center, which you see on the right side, an image, a photo of them, a local community in Semarang, which is sort of, also busy with education, but also bringing food to the poor. And they were looking at that time, they were looking actually for a new building or sort of a new headquarter, and they were very happy that they can take it. So it's really one of these key aspects which I would like to mention with respect, for instance, to the Harvey Center, that you can make as nice building as you want, but if the community is not taking care, and if you don't have the right community, it's not going to work. And that is really in terms of maintenance, in terms of taking care of the building, and in terms of activities. And this also ties a little bit back to what Daliana said very much in the beginning. Instead of space and time, place and occasion. So, in order to make a place, you need the people for it, because otherwise architecture ultimately fails. And with this, we're so far very, very happy with them, because they're really taking care. They're really very adamant in terms of, you put up your mask, you clean your hands before you go in, you take off your shoes. We have COVID-19. This is really an actual situation. It's not just some fantasy. So this is what you need. And with this example, we're also starting to restructure a little bit how we design in terms of not architecture, but really in terms of who is going to be inside the building, because it's really the key aspect of having the right people. Because otherwise, like I said previously, it starts failing. So again, that urban diagram is a little bit different than the rest, because on the other side is an empty field. But the nice point about this library is it's very connected. It's not only the neighborhood, it's very connected towards the whole city, because there is a local tourist bus for domestic tourists, which is for free, and it stops exactly at this location. So the library is much more embedded into the city than, let's say, the Bima one and the Hanging Garden one, which is really only serving the neighborhood. So it's relatively exposed also there, and it has a cafe and a food court around, and it's near Kampung Pelangi, which means the Rainbow Village, which you see in a second. So this is like the neighborhood if you look up to the up to the hill across the river. So it's a very nice neighborhood. It's also got recently sort of cleaned up, and the river got cleaned up, so it's becomes more and more lively. At the same time, again, there's nearby is a school which can make use of the library. And if you look into Instagram and follow it, you see like a lot of people now using it also to go there and using it as a fancy backdrop. How do I get back? Sorry. So about the design principle, so we did a little bit differently also from the others. We made more of a bottom-up design process. So we went into the factory, we looked into the products available they have, and then we started to really design it from out the perspective of what materials and products they have available, rather than designing a form and then thinking about how to make it. So basically, again, it has a sort of a overhang for rain protection and shade. It has this brise soleil, which we use at Zollinger Construction, which is a early 20th century construction from Germany, where I come from. And we found it quite interesting because it's this sort of reciprocal elements, boards putting together, and like sort of 3 boards hold each other, and yeah, you can build up arches or big halls with it, but we use it for this facade. But we found it very interesting because this is also, like, also as I said earlier, you know, with the buckets, with the concrete, and also with this facade, for instance, all these projects are also a little bit for us to experiment and try new things, and trying new things in terms of construction, and trying new things in terms of detailing, and so on and so forth. So, but interestingly, you know, if you look at this diamond pattern, it reminded us to a scale pattern, and Semarang has this Varak Kayu, is a local icon. It's a sort of a dragon-like creature which has a lot of cultural backgrounds. I think you know about more. You want to say something about the Varak Kayu shortly?
Yeah, it's a symbol of ethnic togetherness in a way. It has the influence of Chinese, Arabic, and Japanese all in one animal. So it's really a good symbol.
So yeah, I mean, everybody can find themselves in a symbol, and then with sort of telling this story. So we did not design, oh, we want to design a dragon and thus we make a dragon skin facade. But, you know, while we were designing and in this bottom-up process, we came and so like, oh, there's some sort of analogy, and we start to make the storytelling, because storytelling is also part of this whole, how you embed the microlibrary into the consciousness of everybody around. So with the Bima, we have the buckets. With hanging gardens, we have the gardens, and here we have the Varak Kayu, and therefore we call it Varak Kayu, which means like the wooden Varak, as a sort of part of storytelling. But what we're quite proud of here is a little bit that we have this what we have achieved is a way we have a cultural aspect, a cultural performance, but we also have an environmental performance with this cross ventilation and the shading. So all of a sudden, it's not just one system, a separated system, this is doing that. It's not a sort of a functionalist idea, but, you know, they're a blend of several elements coming together, the environmental aspect as well as the cultural aspect. So yeah, at the factory, you see we have this one-to-one mock-up built there. In order to understand, are the details good? We ping-pong back and forth with the research and development team there for the details, but also to explain the contractor how to build it, that they can see it one-to-one. And yeah, here you see now this activities going on. It's very early because it was closed for a while because there was COVID-19, but the entrance stairs, for instance, not only walking up, you can sit down, you can store your shoes and your bags, and then you can use it also as a seating stair and watch movies when we extend a screen in front of the stairs, for instance. We have a swing underneath, the dragon swing, and we have a net on top. Again, this is also the candy aspect. You know, when you go to the dentist, you get candy or toy afterwards. So if you go to our library, you can swing and hang out in the net and you can have fun. So it's not only about the reading itself. So it's the idea really to inspire kids and really change the image of reading into something positive and playful. So you see how they hang out in the net, and yeah, I mean, we are very happy with the outcome. I mean, it's very nicely and very precisely done and very neatly done. So it's almost, I don't know, maybe you could say Scandinavian, or Japanese in that sense. So yeah, we're very happy to have been able to achieving something like this here in Indonesia. And now I will hand it back to Daliana, and she will round up the presentation.
Since we promised you that there will be other than microlibraries, here are some of our multi-programmatic spaces. So what we try to achieve in all of our public space projects is the possibility that the space could be used for multiple purposes. This is an example in Taman Film, under a highway bridge in Bandung, where you see on the right side some keywords where Florian has mentioned the notion of Kuschelecke, a hugging corner in German, where you could have a hugging corner in between those curves. And residency displays as an urban living room, taking off their shoes, because it's made of a green carpet that makes them feel that they're in a living room or in a mushola. We've seen some babies taking their first steps there, and we find it really beautiful that such a public space could serve what the neighborhood is lacking. And of course, the main purpose of this film park is for watching movies. But when there is no movie being presented, kids just use it as a playscape. And there are a lot of communities using it for weekly gathering, as well as a lot of people using it for hangout. So you could see an aerial view from a drone photography. The curves has several diameters, which represent the number of people gathering on top of it. So we'd like to have diversity of groups, not only small ones, but medium size as well, to enjoy the space. Another project also in Bandung, it is called Alun-Alun Cicendo. So this plaza is made of steel, rusted steel material. And we used the elements of contouring, steps, mixed programs. The main element of the plaza, as you could see in the middle, is used for Monday ceremony. So we have this independence ceremony that we do every Monday in Indonesia. And as well as there are 6 public arts installed here, which is something rare in Indonesia. I mean, usually arts are shown in galleries and museums, and it's hard to reach them, but we'd like to make public art more accessible in public spaces. And there are many activities we found that some we designed for, some we did not design for, such as Kids Zumba. I mean, and there are like some exercises of school children using it for their physical education exercises, but they do not have the facility, so they would go here for those exercises. And a lot of different kind of sports activities, such as skating, basketball, futsal, which is a mini football. And there are also under the deck some blacksmith kiosk, which is part of the relocation of the former blacksmith kiosk vendors around the site. So people have used it for different purposes, from fashion photography, wedding photography, just hanging out, and bengong, which is an Indonesian word, which I'm about to show you what bengong is. So the guy on the right side sitting on the tunnel-like seat is doing bengong. So it's basically just staring into the nothingness, like meditating, but emptier than meditating. You don't think about anything, you just relax. And as you can see here, we are very surprised that the very furniture we designed for seating were interpreted differently by the users. So they use it as like tunnel, tunnel playscape for kids, which we are very happy to see. And water play is an aspect in this public space as well, that after school they could cool down and play with the water. And there are some other spaces that we designed that we did not realize that how the kids would use it. On the right side is basketball, it's designed for, but on the left is a certain kind of string space, which we wanted to experiment, and it's well received by these kids on skates. And there are a lot of other activities in the weekend on the normal days, such as on the top left is a snake show. And on the right side, instead of a Zen garden, which we designed with all the stones, so people could sit there and be calm, but kids are using it as a playground, a stone playground. And at the bottom of the picture is this school physical education sports taking place at the Alun-Alun. And that is the final slide of our presentation. We have more public space projects coming up with also multi-programmatic programs in spaces in mind. And maybe we could show you in a later update. So thank you very much.
Thank you
for having us. Back to you, Donald. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Fantastic. I'm really pleased to see the project. I know you have a lot more, and just under the category of microlibraries, you have lots and lots of other projects that haven't been built or didn't get go ahead. But it's good to see some of the range of the projects and everything that you have. I'm just going to, the Q&A board is open, so if you do have questions for Daliana and Florian, please send through. We have a few questions already, and I'll get to those in just a moment. But before that, there's a few questions that I wanted to cover off a little bit myself. And I guess the first one really is to talk about, you introduced the presentation by talking about play, about Homo Ludens, about the ability or the almost necessity, you might say, of humans to also have play as part of their activities. And clearly the projects, particularly the microlibraries, but also these larger sort of public space libraries, include a lot of play or leisure activity, or, you know, and children feature very big in the projects that you're showing. But I'm also curious in terms of where play exists in your design processes, the degree to which, because each of your microlibraries, as you noted, has quite different sort of aesthetics, qualities, materialities, spatial explorations. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about whether in your design process is also a kind of active playing, in the sense of opening up opportunities and possibilities without having a sort of predetermined destination to some of that.
Okay, thank you. This is a very kind question, actually. It's a very easy to answer one. I mean, as we already mentioned, we started at the Berlage, right? And for us, after studying at the Berlage, to work in Dutch offices is something, you know, was really, really, really great experience. Because me coming from Germany, where I would say architecture is very, as a hierarchical and very sort of organized in a vertical manner. So what we learned and what we appreciated in a Dutch office is actually this playfulness, this experiment, right? And this is something we try to keep as a quality also for our office. So, and especially with microlibraries, where you don't have to be like that cost efficient. I mean, these are also like not for profit projects. So we take the luxury to experiment a lot and like, yeah, play around, you know, and see where it leads and see where it goes and see where it lands, you know, and then we if you have the possibility to place it somewhere, then we see and we evaluate it. So it's just like really a sort of a learning by doing approach in that sense. So would you like to add something?
That's why we become architects, because we want to play. We don't work in banks and we cannot play. But this microlibrary series, indeed, as Florian has mentioned, is our playground. In a way, we can experiment, because we also position ourselves not as consultants who accept commissions, but also architects with ideas. And so we position ourselves as one of the stakeholders, and we tell others how it should be designed. So sometimes we have that luxury, and we play as much as we could.
Yeah, also, I mean, if there's a free minute and one of us has an idea and you sketch it down or you try it out in Rhino or whatever, and then maybe, you know, it stays in a folder for a couple of months, but then, oh, I had this idea back then, you pull it back out and you develop it into a project, or you work out the idea further. You give it to our colleagues who work for us, to our staff, and then say like, hey, try this out, and they come up with things. So this is also something we wanted to establish also in our office itself, because, you know, again, also Indonesia is a little bit sort of hierarchical in terms of age. You know, if you're the senior, you have more to say than the junior. But this is also something we wanted to carry over a little bit from the Netherlands. You know, as long as you have an idea and as long as you work on it, you're free to come up with your own ideas and suggest. So it's very much also a collaborative, experimental thing till we come to a solution for a building then.
Okay, great. Now, just in terms of that, I mean, I'm interested as well, and I'm thinking both between the microlibraries, particularly, I say, the Hanging Gardens Library, as well as the Fibonacci, but also here at this larger urban scale public space. I'm interested in where, in a certain way, who writes the brief, because to a certain degree, it seems as if, in fact, you're the ones putting into it. There's not a pre-existing brief. It's not as if somebody's come to you and said, oh, please, can we have a library here? And here's what it must incorporate. You're actually quite open-ended to that. And so this question of, and here at the larger scale of the public space, this sort of programming of public spaces and the programming of proposed activities versus spontaneous activities, activities that just arise out of the circumstance. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that balance between the kind of programmatic installation of what you put into it versus what you discover as it develops and what emerges out of opportunities.
Yeah, so one of the things in Indonesia is the lack of brief, which sometimes we suffer from it, sometimes we try to benefit from it. So in the case of Alun-Alun Cicendo, where we work with Ridwan Kamil, former mayor of Bandung, currently governor of West Java. He's an architect himself. And he came with a list of programs in Alun-Alun Cicendo, what has to be in. And he said the rest is up to us. So that's exactly where there is a certain degree of freedom that we could have in certain projects. So we try to develop the brief, include everything that he asked for, but also added certain things such as the public art that was not in the brief before, different kind of spaces which were not in the brief before. You would like to add something to that?
Oh, once you're done, then I add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a lot of times I think it's also like we project ourselves into the project. You know, what would we like to have? What did we have as positive experiences previously? And what did we evaluate as something, good? So for instance, with the Cicendo and sort of the stacked landscape, where it is a sort of almost like a pedestal in a museum where you have the sculpture on top. Unfortunately, we don't have the closer zoom in, but you see here and then there's this little art piece. So when we were again in the Netherlands, and there's this Kröller-Müller museum, right, where there's public art. And of course, this is in a natural reservoir reserve in the Netherlands. We thought, like, you know, that would be fantastic to have something like that in the city. You know, we don't have much museums, and again, it's an issue of threshold, people being willing or having sort of the willingness or the possibility even to go into a museum, a well-curated museum. So maybe you can do this on a smaller scale, right? So sort of bring art to everybody, to really something where you can walk up and touch. So what we try to do here is really like use the landscape as a sort of a stimulator through the topography and the geometry to sort of trigger people trying to explore things, you know, because a lot of public spaces, I mean, this is now a bit of a negative example, which I know from Europe. Some of them are just plazas and a couple of trees, right? But not much is going on, not much is stimulating you. And here you stimulate with these different vantage points and different heights, people to move around and look around and start to explore. And exploration also is a way, you know, a sort of play, right? So, I mean, kids are really stimulated by that, running up and down a ramp like crazy and running up and down the stairs. So yeah, it's sort of really a layering of different functions or programs. I mean, depends on, you know, on the time and what happens. And yeah, as you said, like the emergent qualities are quite interesting to see, because, you know, we did not design a playground per se for there, but all of a sudden kids and families were using these white benches, you know, and rearranged it completely and make this crawling tunnels. And of course, for us, this is also a point of evaluation and looking at it and see like how people use the space differently than we intended to, and how can we make that for the next project, how can we incorporate it in a sort of more planned and designed way. So it's really like going back and forth, also learning from what we have done.
Mm. There's a couple of questions that have come in that talk to that. So I'm going to join these two questions together to extend that conversation. The first one was about how do you change the habits of the people that surround the projects so that they have ownership and participation in maintaining the project. But there's another question that says, do the spontaneous responses of the public ever go completely against your purposes and your intentions in a negative way? That is, using the building in a way that damages the design or its utilization. So one is a sense of ownership, or two is a sense of, not disownership, but of reaction against or lack of care to the project.
Let me start on this.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, that's why I like living in Europe, because it's a place where the culture of public spaces and playgrounds are established. I mean, in a way, there is no question about it. There are many of these nicely designed public spaces. But Indonesia is starting, and we somehow skipped this development of public spaces and parks in the past. And since now is the beginning for us, some of them are maintained, some of them are badly under-maintained. They all happen at this phase of experimentation right now of the users. So no matter how badly designed or how well designed these public spaces are, I mean, it's a very good question, because I mean, the success of a public space depends also on the users and on the people around it. On this slide that we are showing is a good example of Taman Film, where somehow the materiality of this artificial grass carpet, it inspires people to take care of this place more like in an urban living room. So they would take off their shoes and collect garbage so that they don't litter on the public space. This is a good example. There are other public spaces that we know in Bandung, and to be honest, including the one of Alun-Alun Cicendo, that's a public space situated in a really diverse user area, and it's also a bigger public space. So sometimes we find them clean, sometimes there are garbage around it. And I think this is just something that architects cannot foresee what it's going to be, I would say. What do you think, Florian?
No, I agree. I mean, it's tricky. We have good examples and we have bad examples. And of course, the question is always, how do we react towards it? And then what do we do differently that something bad does not happen again? So for instance, you know, with the Varak Kayu, it seems like the community is very active and takes very much care, because they did that before, let's say. With the Bima one, with the Microlibrary, it also works very well, because the local youth organization is sort of not controlled, but is sort of stimulated by Dompet Duava. Now with the Hanging Garden one, we have a little bit of problems right now, and we try to figure out how we can solve it. Because we work with the local youth organization, but you also must understand that even though they're voluntary, they first and foremost want to fill their bellies, right? And so what do they do? And so we were talking with them, so we brought this 1,000 gardens in that they maybe can do urban farming. But at a certain moment, you know, we came there, and then parts of this was removed. And then they slowly started to turn the library a little bit into a cafe, and people are starting smoking inside. I mean, there's no problem with it to sell coffee and you know, make a little bit of a living on the side while you're a librarian. But then if you completely turn it around, then it becomes problematic. And so now we're discussing how we can bring somebody else in with a more of a library agenda, rather than it only being a cafe with books. So we want to have it a library with okay, you can drink a coffee, but not a cafe with a couple of books inside, because it's primarily really for families and kids. So the problem in Indonesia a little bit is there's sort of this unwritten law. When somebody is occupying a space long enough and is there long enough, they claim to have the right to the space, and it's very difficult to sort of change the habits and get them out. So that's also the reason why I meant, you know, part of our further design strategy is we need to have the right community right in the beginning, because, you know, if it's sort of got into a certain direction in the wrong direction, sometimes it's then very difficult to change it. So now we're discussing, for instance, with the Hanging Garden with friends of ours who are also in sort of, how would you say, charity organization, how to bring another player in to get this a little bit better under control, that the building is really done, used for the purpose, because otherwise it's really, a little bit waste of money. So yeah, we are very critical there, and not everything is 100% success story,
I mean, one of the other questions was about this idea of having the right people to champion the building and to look after it. And so I guess part of the question then is the degree to which the consultation process, the degree to which are you speaking to the agencies that are either both funding it or helping to program it, but at the same time, is it the local community, and how do you define what is the local community, and how does it work in terms of who really takes not so much ownership but partisanship to it, who advocates for a project into the future?
Yes, this is super important to analyze this correctly, because in the sense of let's say Varak Kayu and Bima, there is a sort of a charity organization behind it, right? And they have a great interest that they donate the money that the building is going to be used as such. And with the Hanging Gardens, I would quite bluntly say, I think maybe we were a little bit naive, because we thought like, hey, we're going to make this great building for the neighborhood and the neighborhood will use it accordingly. But then we figured in the sort of hard way, if you're not having this sort of overarching umbrella organization behind and really sort of steering it into the right direction, it can also go a little bit wrong. And this is what we try to solve right now. So, and in that sense, in the Hanging Garden is also, can be quite honest about it. The interest of Manila Water was, we donate the city money for the library. The city gives us some work to do, some commissions, but there was no further engagement other than paying the city the library, so the rest is up to the city, and sometimes the city is not best organized. But versus with the other examples, there are organizations behind who have a larger interest into the whole library and the reading story, that they take care longer, that they're long-term engaged. So this is really something where we sort of learn the hard way, okay, if we don't have a donor or CSR program who wants to take care longer, we need to step in and find some replacement for that. And this is what we're doing right now with the Hanging Garden one.
So learning from all these individual microlibraries, we come to realize that when doing a microlibrary, we need also commitment and engagement of the funder to go beyond the construction of the building, to also provide operational budget so that a librarian could be hired, or through a community who could take care of this individual libraries. So in the near future, we will have a microlibrary foundation to also take care of this. But it is a challenge to also design and do all this operation and management. But at some point we will make it, because it is indeed a very important aspect of a building to be operated properly.
We are also in contact with a lot of people, and we recently talked with a lady, and she's busy with doing libraries in Indonesia as well. And she also changed her model completely from doing libraries in sort of spaces which were empty and providing books. And she also figured out that she donated a lot of books, and she came there, and all of a sudden she asked the kids how it is with the books, and said, like, yeah, it's nice, but I have to pay 5,000 rupiah, which is actually for us it's nothing, but for them it's a lot of money, right? And they're like, why do you have to pay? Yeah, because the librarian asks for money. And she was like very surprised, because she gave the books for free, and then all of a sudden a librarian, is sort of leeching off. So you have to understand that it's not even maybe meant as something bad, but people very often need to first fill their belly. So only if you, this is from a Western perspective, you can be do voluntary work, but only because we have, we have food and we have income, and then we can dedicate our spare time to be active for society and for the community. But if you if you are hungry, you know, the first thing you take care of is fill your belly, and this is something, yeah, we also needed to understand a little bit and have to react towards that when doing libraries, you know.
Mm. There's a couple of questions here that I'm going to, again, kind of merge them together, because they both deal with the question of citing and the sites. And the first one says, really great presentation. I was wondering about the choice of the site for your microlibraries, as you seem to spend a lot of time looking for a good location. What are the elements you are looking for that will make the project as successful as possible, and how does it impact your approach to your library? Now, at the same time, there's another comment question which says, hi, I'm one of your fans from Semarang, and I recently visited the Varak Kayu Microlibrary. I experienced quite the reading experience, and I really love the cool atmosphere there. Since Semarang temperature is very hot, your design can be an oasis for that. But my question is the location of the microlibrary is very near the highway, so the noise is pretty loud during the library opening, and it can be disturbing for a reading space. How does your design approach that issue? So this question of siting and what are the kind of parameters that underwrite, you know, and as you said, sometimes you have to wait for a project to come about because it's not the right site.
Mm.
Well, yeah, thank you, Donald, and for all the questions being asked. Thank you for those asking those questions. I mean, about the site, yes, I think number one is to have a very good site. And to have a very good site for microlibrary, we always look for a place that is that already has an activity. So not a complete new space where nobody knows. That could be a very great risk to make it a livable place. So in this case of this slide, Microlibrary Bima is a plaza which is 500 meters square, and it is known for by the neighborhood that they could play football, futsal there, like a small football, and they would go there and they could sit on the stage that they had before we put the library on top. And they know that this is a place of gathering, so people would go there. And they used to have also a small mobile library initiative there, so it all fits in. And it is also a place of intersection of middle income housing and a lower income housing. So we thought it's a site that could be the melting pot of these different income classes. Yeah, and in the case of Microlibrary Warak Kayu in Semarang, there is an existing site that the mayor of Semarang, together with our sponsor Kayu Lapis, directed us. And we think it's a great site because it's near Kampung Pelangi, which is the settlement of the colorful houses. And it is really connected with the road, which comes the critic, it's noisy, but then we cannot have everything there perfect. And yes, maybe it's a bit noisy, and then in that case, then we have to close the curtain, and or maybe noise doesn't matter so much when there are also different activities going on there. So
I would like to add something. So first of all, one basic parameter for the site is it needs to be occupied, right? So we want to add value. So it has to be lively and the community needs to use it, because we have no illusions. If we place something where nothing is going on, then sort of jumpstart it is difficult. So we always try to get the synergies with functions or programs which are already in around the site. So that's number one. And then again, Semarang, about the noise. Yeah, we are quite aware of it. But, you know, look, you just heard it. We are living in a very massive house here, you know, and if a car drives by, it is noisy inside. I mean, even though it's a house of concrete. So the building standard is a little bit lower, I must say, in Indonesia. So even if you have a glass window, it's not very noise protected at all. and then a lot of motorcycles, they have like this open up knalpot exhausts, and they're super loud, right? And you have all this noise and all these scooters going around. So even if you're in a relatively sealed building, it's super noisy here, and you have to get used to it. So now the decision for Varak Kayu to make it open or close, and we have this discussion a lot. It's not only about noise, it's also about dust, and it's also about moisture and so on and so forth. Is it not damaging to the books and so on and so forth? Yes, at times it can pose a problem, but you know, in the sense of being able to attract more people due to the location, we rather prefer the noisy location than an empty location, because you can reach much more people, right? And you know, we could even set down, if you make a completely closed building with glass facade, it would be still super noisy inside, because it's single glass here, what you get, it's not airtight, and so on and so forth. It would not much improve. And it was also a decision that we didn't make. We used curtains inside because that reduced the weight, and the weight reduced then the construction thickness. We could make this sort of little cantilevers all around, and you know, so yeah, and also we could save costs. So this openness is of course a chain of decisions we took, of course, with saying, yeah, maybe noise-wise it's not good, but then we would have to install double glazing, which we don't have, because you know the decibel in terms of cars and traffic is much higher in Indonesia than it is in Australia and Europe, because simply this open up exhaust is just like, really, I mean, sometimes I'm lying in bed here at 2 o'clock in the morning and some chainsaw is riding past the house where I think like my ears fall off, you know. This is, you know, I can't change it.
Yeah. You have the image up of the Microlibrary Bima, and there was a question back at the beginning asking about this when they says, what's the longevity of the plastic facade of the buckets for the library, and eventually do they get brittle and start breaking?
Yes, I would start on answering that. It's 5 years. So this is not a ready-made building material. We experiment on upcycling plastic buckets, which are otherwise thrown away or become garbage. So in the very beginning, we used these ice cream buckets without any protection. So just like that. And we found out that after 5 years that it got, some got a little bit more brittle than the other, and the sun really did give damage to it. So we used the moment of the Aga Khan nomination to do a renovation with the sponsor and replace all those ice cream buckets, and recycled the previous ice cream buckets that we used for the facade and replaced them with new ones, but this time painted with UV coating. So this will extend the longevity, but it is an experimental material, so it's not going to last for 50 years.
I mean, so one bucket, we bought it from an online vendor, and this online vendor was collecting these buckets over several months to get all our 2,000 buckets. And just to give a sort of a price comparison, I think what one bucket is 10,000. We have 16 buckets, so it's what 160,000. So a square meter is what probably 10 Australian dollars in terms of material. It's per square meter. So it's not so super expensive. And we had actually, after this became relatively brittle, we actually almost got into a fight, you know, what to do. So I said, like, okay, we could just keep the fins and we place something else in, and we say, okay, this is part of the concept to you know, also try out other materials or other design strategies. And at that time we were in Singapore, and we were visiting our friend Jintan. He's working at Arup, and we were discussing this issue with him on a dinner. And he said, like, look, I mean, if you have a usual building, and you know, after 3-4 years, you also need to paint it. You know, you need to change the outer layer. And how much does it cost? And we explained it to him. He said, like, yeah, but then he said like, okay, labor is not that expensive for changing them, and the material is also not that expensive. So it is like, you know, painting the building new if you just exchange the complete facade. And then I thought like, okay, I mean, that sounds reasonable. So we changed it, and then of course we learned from it, and we coded it, and now we will see if it's going to hold longer than the previous cycle. But I mean, you know, this is also interesting to see and learn, and yeah, and to react towards it. So
yeah. Great. Okay, I'm gonna again put a couple of questions together. One says, hi SHAU, thank you for your informative presentation. I have a question. What books, publications help shape your architecture? And another one comes and says, where are most of the inspirations come from in the design of the microlibraries? So I guess this is really about sort of inspiration, backgrounding. What are the influences or the impacts that are particularly to do with the microlibraries?
This one is a difficult question because at SHAU there is Florian and I, and we're one body with two heads. So the answer could be a long list of 100 items that we cannot agree on. I think it's, of course, we're influenced by what we have read and what we have learned in our years of practicing architecture in Dutch offices as well as at school. But what inspires us is also chances and possibilities, because this is something that we cannot design. I mean, in a way, we have something in mind that we always want our architecture to be beneficial, performative, socially and environmentally. But we would not be able to realize things like microlibraries if we haven't found the right partner. And that has to be done at the right time with the right people. So I would say that that this very much shape many architects' directions or way of designing when they meet this clientele, when they meet this sponsor that allow them to express themselves in such a way.
I would like to add a little bit. So I think it's more structured around topics rather than topics, and then with that maybe design references we see and evaluate. And basically, you know, we have this sort of socially and environmentally responsible. So during, let's say, my time when I was working at UN Studio, there were these different knowledge groups, and one was the integrative sustainability group or something. I was part of that. So I was always interested in sort of a performance of a facade, the performance of the envelope. And later on, I worked on that with the adaptive daylight systems and structures in large span roofs. I also worked with this sort of environmental relationship between inside and outside and microclimates and sort of these sort of topics. These are a little bit my topics, right? These passive climatic strategies and lighting and the envelope as such. And I would say Daliana's is more like maybe the urban, the social component, the community component through her work and her research. And basically we just like, you know, literally sort of starting to marry that. And of course, some puzzle pieces fall into place if you, you know, think about maybe trying to reread right now the architecture of the well-tempered environment, which I came in touch to with the Berlage Institute, Rainer Benham, about sort of the climate, the climatic aspect is a very important aspect for a building to work, because if people aren't feeling comfortable, then won't use it. So how to build up more on that sort of thing. Yeah, I would say these are the sort of two key components, sort of maybe you want to explain a bit more about the social communal aspect, but you know, then at the same time, I mean, having been working at UN Studio and having worked on this very complex and complicated buildings, you know, basically SHAU is not necessarily a continuation of that one, because, you know, when we came here and arrived here, we had to relearn a lot of things or unlearn a lot of things and try to understand that we're not in this super developed environment where we can do anything and everything if there is enough money involved, because now we're dealing with a project where there is not much money and we have to become creative in another way of how to make things happen within maybe a more limited budget and more limited technological possibilities. So we have to what we try to do is we try to see this the environment where we are operating in as something we need to understand, and then try to push the boundaries from within rather than putting ourselves completely out of the system and try to change it from the outside. If you know what I mean, sort of first understand what's going on and then trying to push into step by step and see what's going.
Great.
But in most of our work, I hope we can agree that we have traces of what we learned from OMA, MVRDV, and UN Studio all at once, I think. And MVRDV and OMA is about urban narrative, basically how the building presents a discourse in the neighborhood, in the city, and it would like to bring issues forward, and it would like to solve a certain problem. And I think what Florian mentioned about the Indonesian context probably has shaped us a lot, because we have to be even more creative when we have restrictions in terms of ambition and budget. So we have to work through that. So the formula of SHAU is then OMA plus MVRDV plus UN Studio plus Indonesian context. I think those are the 4 factors. And
plus us, a big portion of.
Yeah, not only we play a lot, but we also fight a lot. So that's
that's a very good wrap up. So really, it's fantastic to be able to host SHAU here and to get to see the work of Florian and Daliana and all of their collaborators and practitioners working with it. I really thank everybody for tuning in. And I haven't been able to answer all of the questions that have been posted, but thank you very much for posting them. We do record these, and we have a record of the questions that have been asked, and they will be forwarded to Daliana and to Florian, and they may get an opportunity to answer them more directly into the future. So again, thank you very much for coming to us from Bandung. It's a real pleasure to be able to host you here on MSD at Home, and hopefully that network now has a better understanding of the work that you're doing, and really looking forward to future projects as they develop and as they come online. So thank you again for joining with us. Before we finish, I just want to announce some of the events through MSD at Home that will take place over the next few weeks. This Friday, we have an MSD at Home with Sophia Malson. The topic is around shared housing, digitalization, changing tenure, and the future of housing. This is hosted by George Stojanovic, a senior lecturer here at the faculty. So please join in for that if you can on Friday. It's at 4:15 Melbourne time till 5:45. And then in 2 weeks' time after that, on Wednesday, the 23rd of September, at the same time as this talk tonight, so at 6 o'clock Melbourne time, we have MSD at Home with Hanif Kara, talking about practice, research, and building commons. And this is hosted by senior lecturers David Ma and Lira Asensio Valaria as part of a series they're putting together. And then the next day, on Thursday, the 24th of September, also at 1800, 6 p.m., we have MSD at Home with William Smart, open and integrated spaces, 3 recent projects from the Smart Design Studio, hosted by Professor Alan Pert. Please look at our website if you can. We have a book launch on the 30th of September, on Wednesday, the 30th of September, with Anoma Paris, Architecture's Exceptions, War, Borders, and Sovereignty. Sovereignty, Space, and Civil War in Sri Lanka, a porous nation. So please join us on that on Wednesday, the 30th, also at 6 p.m., 1800 hours. And please look at our website for more information about events that are happening, as well as the recordings. This evening's presentation by SHAU has been recorded and will be uploaded in the coming week or so. and all other previous presentations at MSD at Home have been recorded and will be uploaded and available. So please review those again and please send them out to your network. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you very much to Florian and Daliana for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.